The first time I heard her say it, I almost laughed. 16 years of marriage, 2 kids, a mortgage on a house that had been featured in a magazine, a second home in Aspen, a charity board seat she ran better than I ran my own company. And she stood in our bedroom, in the silk robe I had bought her for our 10th anniversary, and she told me I was no longer her husband. I would learn, much later, that she had been practicing those words all week, that she had rehearsed them in the bathroom mirror, the way you rehearse something you do not want to say. That every time the sentence came out, it took something with it from her that she would not get back. But that night, all I heard was the lock. The deadbolt slides harder than people think. There is a small, deliberate click when the brass catches the frame, and then a deeper, more final click when the second bolt falls into place. I had installed that lock myself the week we moved in. I had stood in the same doorway 8 years earlier and shown her how it worked. I had told her that this lock would keep anyone out who tried to hurt us. Now I was turning it against her. Her suitcase sat by the front gate in the rain. The little bronze numbers of the house, 1418, glowed in the porch light. The lawn was immaculate because the gardener had come that morning. The fountain in the courtyard was still running because she had never turned it off, because she loved the sound of it at night. I could hear it from the bedroom window, the soft rush of water that had become the heartbeat of our house for almost a decade. She did not knock. She did not call. She stood at the gate in her robe, in the rain, and she waited for me to undo what I had done. I did not undo it. I went to bed. I lay on my side of the mattress, where I had lain beside her for 15 years and 9 months. The pillow still smelled like her shampoo. On the nightstand was the framed photo of the kids at the beach last summer, and beside that, the small silver locket that had belonged to her mother. She wore it every day. She had forgotten it in the rush, or she had left it deliberately, the way you leave a piece of yourself when you know you may not be back. I would think about that locket for a long time. In the morning, I told the house manager that the wife had decided to take some time at the lake house. I told the kids she had flown out to see her sister. I told the office I was taking a few personal days. I was very calm. I was very precise. I was very wrong. I had been a fool for almost a year, and I did not yet know it. Let me tell you about Margaret. She was 23 when I met her, working 2 jobs and finishing her degree at night. She poured coffee at a small place near the courthouse in Greenwich, and I was on my way to a meeting I should not have taken. I spilled a cappuccino on my suit jacket. She brought napkins. She did not flirt. She did not apologize more than once. She had a quality I had not seen in anyone in a long time. A quiet, unperformative dignity that was not trying to be anything other than what it was. I asked her to dinner because I wanted to talk to her again. I did not know then what I was starting. We married 3 years later. By then, I had built the company into something larger than I had imagined. We bought the house on Roxbury Drive the week our daughter was born. It sat on 2 acres at the end of a private lane in one of those Los Angeles neighborhoods where the hedges are taller than the fences and the air smells like jasmine in the early summer. The broker called it a trophy property. Margaret called it too big. She said the kindest thing about it was that there was room for the kids to run. She ran the house the way she ran the rest of our life, carefully, gracefully, without complaint. She remembered birthdays for the gardener's son. She handled the holidays for my mother, who was fading into dementia, with a gentleness that I still cannot describe without my voice breaking. She paid the bills. She came to my board dinners and made the wives of the other executives feel seen, which is more than I could manage in 3 meetings. I thought I knew her. I thought I knew her as well as a man could know another human being after 16 years, 2 children, 3 houses, and a shared checking account. I did not know her. The first sign was a series of cash withdrawals I noticed in October. They were small, 300, 500, 800, never on the same day, never at the same branch, never enough to flag anything. I am the sort of man who notices cash withdrawals because cash is the only currency a wealthy man cannot trace, and I have spent 30 years in a business where the trace matters. I did not ask her about them. I told myself it was her money. I told myself we did not have the kind of marriage where you interrogated the person you loved about the way they spent their personal allowance. I told myself I was being a good husband by not noticing. Then, in November, I noticed the second sign. A young man was at our gate. He was tall, lean, with dark hair that fell across his forehead in a way that was familiar to me, in a way I could not place. He stood on the sidewalk beside the hedge, looking up at our house with the expression of someone who was not selling anything or delivering anything. He was just looking at it, the way a person looks at a place they have heard about and are seeing for the first time. I drove past him without stopping. I told myself he was a neighbor's guest. I told myself he was lost. Then, in December, I noticed the third sign. She had been going to spin class twice a week for a year. I had never questioned it because she had always been athletic, and I respected her need for a routine that was hers. But that December, she started coming home from spin class smelling like coffee, not like the gym. And she started carrying a small tote bag that I had never seen, with a paperback sticking out of the top. I did not ask. I want you to understand what kind of man I was. I was a man who had made his entire life out of noticing things. I had built a company by noticing. I had kept the company by noticing. I had survived 3 near bankruptcies by noticing the thing no one else had bothered to look at. And I refused, actively, deliberately refused, to notice what my wife was doing in our own home, because noticing it would mean I had to do something about it. And I did not want to do something about it. I was a coward. I will own that for the rest of my life. The argument, when it came, was a small one. We argued about whether to send our son, Daniel, to a private school in the city, or to keep him at the parish school where his teacher loved him. She wanted to keep him where he was. I wanted to give him what I had been given. The conversation escalated. I said something I should not have said. She went quiet in the way she always went quiet when I hurt her, and I went to my office to work. I came back at 11. She was not in bed. She was sitting on the edge of the bathtub with her phone in her lap. The screen was still lit. When I came in, she slid it under her leg with the speed of someone who had been waiting to do exactly that. I asked her what was wrong. "Nothing," she said. I asked her again. She looked at me for a long time. Her eyes were wet, but she did not cry. Margaret did not cry in front of me. She had not cried in front of me since the day our son was born, and the cord had wrapped around his neck, and the doctors had worked for 2 minutes that felt like a year. She had held her breath and squeezed my hand and waited, and when Daniel cried for the first time, she had looked up at the ceiling and given thanks to a God she had stopped talking to 3 years earlier. She did not cry. She spoke. She said, "You are not my husband anymore." I asked her what she meant. She said, "I cannot do this. I need you to not be my husband for a while. I need you to let me go somewhere. I need you to let me figure something out. I asked her what she needed to figure out. She said, "Please do not ask me that." I felt the floor tilt. Not physically, but the way the ground tilts when you find out the clean thing you thought you were standing on has always been something else. I felt the marriage tilt. I felt the house tilt. I felt the entire careful structure we had spent 16 years building, with its matching towels and its coordinated holidays and its shared passwords and its trust, tilt. I said, "If you walk out of this house, you are not walking back in." I did not mean it. I want to record that I did not mean it. But the words came out with the kind of force a man uses when he is trying to hold on to something that is leaving him. The words were a hand gripping a railing that was already gone. She said, "I know." She went into the bedroom. She came out with a small suitcase. She had packed it ahead of time. It was the suitcase she had packed for Aspen, for the lake house, for any of the dozen small trips she took without me. She had packed it before I came home. She had written the line on her face the way actors write their lines on their faces before a scene. She walked toward the door. I locked it. Now I want to tell you what I did not know. When Margaret was 17, she had a son. His name was Caleb. He was born in a small hospital in Bakersfield, and he was taken from her arms by a young couple who had been waiting 3 years for a child. She had not told them, and they had not asked, that his father was a boy she had loved in high school, who had left for the army 3 weeks after she told him she was pregnant. She did not tell them she had worked doubles at the diner to save the money for the bills. She did not tell them she had named him before he was born. She named him Caleb after her grandfather. She did not see him again. She met me at 23, and she did not tell me. She did not tell me because she had been raised by a mother who believed that the past was not a thing you opened, and because the adoption had been closed, and because she had been told, gently, by a counselor in Bakersfield, that the best gift she could give her son was the gift of not being a wound he had to carry. She carried it alone. She did not carry it resentfully. She did not carry it bitterly. She carried it the way you carry a piece of paper in your wallet that has a name on it. You do not take it out and show it to anyone, but you do not throw it away. She married me. She had our daughter, Catherine, and then our son, Daniel. She built a life with me that was real, that was warm, that was good. She raised our children and loved our home and ran our charity and sent our holiday cards and visited my mother every Sunday without complaint. She was present in every way a wife can be present. And underneath it, in the place where she kept the deepest thing she had, was a folder she had never shown me. The folder had a single piece of paper in it, a grainy black and white photo of a newborn, taken at the hospital, in the first hours after he had been taken from her arms. She had looked at that photo once a year, every year, on the day he had been born. She had not talked to anyone about it. Then, in October of the year I locked her out, she received an email. The email was from a law firm in Bakersfield. The law firm had represented the agency that handled her adoption, and they had been given permission by the adoptive parents to reach out to her. The adoptive parents were older now. They were both unwell. The father had died in March. The mother was dying of a kind of cancer that does not let you say goodbye on your own schedule. And Caleb, who was 19 and in his second year at a community college in Pasadena, had been told, gently, that they wanted him to know where he came from before his mother died. Margaret sat in the kitchen for a long time after she read that email. She did not know what to do. She had spent 17 years building a life in which Caleb did not exist. Not because she did not love him, because she had been told and had believed that the kindest thing she could do for him was to be a silence in his life, to not be a complication in the home the adoptive parents had given him, to not be a ghost in his college application or his first apartment or his first love. Now, his adoptive mother was dying. Now the silence had an expiration. She wrote back to the law firm. She said she would be willing to meet him, once, in a neutral place, so that he could see her before his mother died. She asked that the meeting be kept from me. She asked that the meeting be kept from the kids. She asked that it be kept from everyone, because she did not want the first impression her son had of her to be in any way complicated by the house, or the cars, or the schools, or the wealth that had nothing to do with the choice she had made when she was 17. She did not tell me because she did not want me to have to carry it. That was her deepest instinct. She wanted to absorb the weight of it alone, so that I would not have to feel guilty for not knowing, so that the kids would not have to feel the strange, secondary grief of learning they had a brother, so that the family we had built would not have to be taken apart and put back together in a different shape. She met him twice in November, at a small coffee shop in Pasadena that she had never been to before. He was very tall. He was very gentle. He had her mother's eyes, the gray that goes blue in certain light. He had the kind of quiet dignity she carried. He had the way of sitting in a chair that she had. He was respectful, almost painfully so. He did not ask her for anything. He asked her if she had been okay. She came home from those meetings smelling like coffee. She started carrying the small tote bag with a paperback, a book he had lent her, A History of Bakersfield in the 1940s. She did the cash withdrawals to buy him a watch he had admired at a thrift store on Lake Avenue, because she had wanted to give him something from her that was not money. She took him to the place she had been born, because she had wanted him to stand where his grandmother had stood. She did all of this in 5 weeks. In 5 weeks, she carried the weight of 2 adoptions, a dying mother-in-law in Bakersfield, 2 young adult children of her own, a household of 9 staff, a board seat, and a husband who was too busy to notice that she was disappearing. And she did not tell me. Then the night came, and I locked her out. And I went to bed. Let me tell you what happened to her that night. She stood at the gate in the rain for 15 minutes. Then she called her sister, who lived in Studio City, and her sister drove over with a coat and got her into the car. She did not cry in the car. She did not cry in her sister's guest room. She did not cry in the morning when the kids called her and she told them she had gone to visit a friend. She cried at one moment. She cried when her sister asked her on the 3rd day whether she was ever going to tell her husband. She said, "He would forgive me. He is the kind of man who would forgive me. He is the kind of man who would put his arm around me and tell me that we would figure it out together." And that is exactly why I cannot tell him, because I cannot let this be the next thing he carries. I cannot be the next wound he has to forgive. Her sister told her she was being foolish. Her sister told her that forgiveness was not a wound, that forgiveness was the family business, that the man she had married had spent 30 years of his life learning how to forgive people he should not have forgiven professionally, and that he would do it again for the right reason. Margaret shook her head. She said, "He is afraid of being lied to. I know this about him. He has built his whole life around not being lied to. If I tell him now, he will forgive me, but he will never be sure ever again that he is being told the truth." I would rather lose him than make him live in that. She went back to her sister's house and called Caleb. She told him his grandmother had died. He came over. He sat at her sister's kitchen table in his college jacket, with the silver watch she had given him on his wrist, and he said, "I am sorry you lost me twice." She did not answer for a long time. Then she said, "You did not lose me. You found me. You are allowed to call me any time you want to call me. You are allowed to come into my home any time you want to come into my home. You are a part of my family, and I am sorry it took me this long to be brave enough to say that out loud." I did not know any of this. I was lying in the mansion on Roxbury Drive, with the fountain still running, looking at the silver locket on the nightstand. What I knew then was cash withdrawals, a stranger at the gate, the smell of coffee where the gym should have been, a sentence she had rehearsed. I was sure I had been betrayed. I will tell you now about the second lockout, the lockout that mattered. It came in March. I had not seen my wife in 3 months. The kids saw her on weekends. I saw her in the doorway once, when she came back to pick up winter clothes she said she needed. She was thinner. She looked at me the way you look at a person you are not sure you are married to anymore. I kept the door between us. I kept saying I was protecting the children, but I was protecting myself. I did not want to hear the answer to the question I had not yet asked. Then, on a Thursday in late March, I got a call. It was from a lawyer in Bakersfield. The lawyer said his name was Mr. Henley. He said he had been retained by a young man named Caleb Brine. He said that Mr. Brine had been trying for some time to reach his birth mother, and that the only reason contact had not been made was that a member of the family, the husband, had been refusing access. I sat down in my office. The lawyer told me, patiently and with great clarity, that Mr. Brine was 19 years old and had been placed for adoption as an infant. He told me that the adoptive mother, Mrs. Brine, had died in February. He told me that Mr. Brine, in the weeks after her death, had tried to meet his birth mother and had been told by various parties that the husband of his birth mother had been blocking contact. He told me that no such instruction had been given and that he was calling to clarify. I told him I had not blocked any contact. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Sir, I want to be clear with you, because your wife has asked me to be clear with you. She has not made any statement to suggest that you did anything other than make a decision under emotional distress. She has asked me to clarify only, so that the young man is not in the position of being told that his own father is the obstacle." I put the phone down. I picked it up. I asked him to repeat the name of the young man. Caleb Brine. I asked him to repeat the name of his birth mother, Margaret Ann Holloway. I sat in my office for 3 hours. I had not known. I want to say that I want to say it again. I had not known. I had not, in any single moment of my marriage, suspected that my wife was carrying a son she had placed for adoption before we met. I had been so busy seeing the woman in the silk robe, the woman who ran the charity, the woman who ordered the flowers for the table, that I had not seen the 17-year-old girl in Bakersfield. I thought about my son, Daniel, who was 16. I thought about how thin Daniel's face had been when he was a baby, and how I had held him through colic for 3 months because Margaret had been recovering from the birth and had been unable to sleep. I thought about how I would have felt in another life, holding Caleb at that same age. I thought about the watch on the nightstand. I thought about the locket on the nightstand. The locket had not been hers for 11 years. It had been her mother's. Her mother had given it to her on the day Margaret had married me. Her mother had said, "Take this with you. It is not a piece of jewelry. It is the memory of every woman in our family who ever had to be brave." Margaret had worn it every day since, and she had left it on the nightstand the night I locked her out. Then I remembered something I had not thought about in 20 years. I had asked her, the first month we dated, why she wore that locket, and she had told me, very carefully, that it had been her grandmother's. She had not told me a story about it. She had not given me a memory. She had simply said that it had been her grandmother's. I did not push. I am the man who did not push. I called the lawyer back. I told him that I had been wrong. I told him that the young man was welcome in our home at any hour of any day we were in town, and that if my wife was not comfortable bringing him into the home yet, I would meet him first, alone, at any place he chose. The lawyer said he would pass the message along. Then I did the hardest thing I have ever done. I drove to my sister-in-law's house in Studio City. I knocked on the door. My sister-in-law opened it. She looked at me the way you look at a man who has done a small, terrible thing. She did not say anything. I asked to see my wife. She led me to the back of the house. My wife was sitting on a small wooden chair in the kitchen, in jeans and a flannel shirt, holding a mug of tea. There was a young man at the table beside her. He was tall. He had dark hair that fell across his forehead. He had the gray eyes that go blue in certain light. He stood up when I came in. He said, "Sir." I sat down across from him. I said, "Caleb." He nodded. I said, "I want to apologize to both of you. I want to apologize to you, Caleb, because I did not know you existed, and I should have known. I want to apologize to my wife, because the reason I did not know is that I refused to see what was in front of me, because seeing it would have meant I had to be brave enough to ask the question, and I was afraid of the answer. That is not your fault, Margaret. That is mine." She did not speak. I said, "I want to ask you both to come home. Not tonight, whenever you are ready. I want to ask Caleb to come home, because he is part of this family, and I am sorry I did not make that clear sooner. I want to ask Margaret to come home, because I will not lock you out again. I will not give you an ultimatum. I will not pretend that the last 3 months did not happen. I will not pretend that I did not have a moment when I did not love you. I will tell you, as honestly as I have ever told you anything, that I did love you in that moment. I loved you in the way a man loves a thing he is afraid of losing. I would rather lose that fear than lose you." I looked at Caleb. I said, "I would like to know you. I would like to know what you like to read. I would like to know what you want to do with your life. I would like to know if you have ever had a family dinner in a house that felt safe. If you have not, I would like to invite you into one. I do not expect you to call me Dad. I expect you to call me whatever is comfortable. But I want you in that house. Not because I am making amends, because you belong there." Caleb looked at Margaret. She nodded. He said, "Thank you, sir." I said, "I would prefer if you called me by my first name, when you were ready." He said, "Thank you." I stood up. I went to my wife's chair. I knelt down, the way you kneel when you want the other person to be looking at you from below, the way children kneel beside their parents when they are saying goodnight. I took her hand. I said, "I am sorry I locked you out. I am sorry I did not see you. I am sorry I made you carry this alone. I am sorry you felt, in our house, that you could not tell me the truest thing about yourself. She put her hand on my head. She said the thing she had not said to me in 3 months. She said, I am sorry I did not trust you with it. I stood up. I went home. I unlocked the front door. I left it unlocked. I left a key under the mat, the way she had told me she liked, in our 2nd year of marriage, when she had forgotten her key and I had not been home. I put the silver locket on the kitchen counter, where she would see it first when she came in. I moved the suitcase from the gate. I waited. Now I want to tell you about the moment that fixed everything. It was a Wednesday in April. Caleb was at the table. Daniel was at the table. Catherine was at the table. Margaret was at the table. I was at the table. We had a simple dinner: roast chicken, green beans, a bottle of wine Margaret had chosen. Caleb was quiet. Daniel was asking him about baseball. Catherine was rolling her eyes at her brother. It was a Tuesday night dinner. It was exactly the kind of dinner I had never once, in all the years we had lived in this house, sat down to. It was the kind of dinner I had been too rich to have. After dinner, Caleb stood in the kitchen. He said, Ma, I want to thank your mother for me when you see her. I never got to thank her because I was too little to know. But I want her to know that I am okay. I want her to know that the people who took care of me were kind. I want her to know that I am in college. I want her to know that I read the book she lent me. I want her to know that I am starting to learn what bravery looks like in a person. I learned it from you. Margaret was sitting across from him. She put her head in her hands. Daniel, who is 16, did not understand the whole conversation, but understood enough to get up, walk around the table, and hug his mother from behind. I stood up. I went to the cabinet. I took down the silver locket. I put it around Margaret's neck. I said, I think this belongs to the family now. She closed her hand over it. She said, It always did. Caleb said, I have something too. He took from his pocket a folded piece of paper. He unfolded it and laid it on the table. It was the grainy black and white photo of an infant, taken in a hospital in Bakersfield. He said, I want her husband to see her. I want her husband to see the boy she gave up so she could be ready for the boy I am about to be his son. I looked at the photo. It was a newborn. He had her eyes. I had not known that babies could look like their mothers. I learned it that night. I want to tell you what happened over the next few months because it was not a fairy tale. It was harder than a fairy tale. Caleb came to dinner every Wednesday and every Sunday. Catherine was suspicious of him for the first month because she is 11 and because she had been told that grown-up surprises are not always good ones. She asked him, in front of me, whether he was going to take their father away from them. He said, No, Catherine, I am not. I am here because your mother is the bravest woman I have ever met. I am not here to take anything from you. I am here to add to the family, if you will let me. Catherine looked at him for a long time. Then she said, You can have the green beans. That was her way of saying yes. Daniel was easier. Daniel is the kind of boy who has never met a person he did not want to know more about. He asked Caleb what his favorite video game was. He asked him what his favorite band was. He asked him what he had been like at 16. Caleb said, I do not know. I have never been 16. I will let you know. Margaret, in those months, did something I had never seen her do. She rested. She rested the way a person rests when they have been carrying a piece of furniture for a long time and finally set it down. She did not perform. She did not organize. She did not run the house the way she had run it before. She sat on the couch and read. She let Catherine pick the music in the car. She let Daniel choose the restaurant on Sunday. I did not know she had been this tired. I learned that I had been married for 16 years to a woman who had been carrying two families. The family she had made and the family she had given away at the same time. I learned that I had been looking at her from a distance that I had mistaken for closeness. I learned that the mansion is not a home. It is a setting. A home is built out of the choice to know another person, which is the choice to be surprised by them, which is the choice to forgive what you did not expect. Caleb moved into the small guest apartment above the garage that summer. He did not move into the main house. He moved into the apartment above the garage, and he kept his door open, and he kept his books on the table by his bed, and he kept his watch on his wrist, and he called my wife Ma, and he called me Sir, until the day that he did not call me Sir. The day he did not call me Sir was a Wednesday in October. We were in the kitchen. I was making coffee, badly, the way I have always made coffee. He came down the stairs and said, "Good morning, Dad." I put the coffee pot down. I did not speak for a long time. I said, "Good morning, son." Margaret was standing in the doorway. I had not seen her come in. She was wearing jeans and a flannel shirt. The silver locket was around her neck. Her eyes were wet, but she did not cry. She said, "You are late." I said, "I am sorry." She said, "Do not be sorry. Be here." I have never been better at anything than I have been at being here in the 18 months since. This is what I want to leave you with. I locked my wife out of our home because I did not know what was in our home. I did not know what was in our home because I was afraid to look. I was afraid to look because I thought the answer to the question I was afraid to ask would tell me that the woman I loved was someone I did not know. I did not understand then that love is not the absence of surprise. Love is the presence of surprise. The willingness to be surprised by the person you have chosen, again, every day, even when the surprise is the heaviest one you have ever been asked to bear. My wife did not need me to forgive her for what she had been carrying. She needed me to be brave enough to look at what she had been carrying. She needed me to be brave enough to be the kind of husband who could be told the truth about his own family by the woman he had promised to be the truest thing to. I am that husband now. I am not a perfect husband. I still lock the door out of habit. I still forget the small things. I still do not make the coffee well. But every night, before I go to bed, I check to see that every door in the house is open. Because this house is not meant to keep anyone out. It is meant to keep everyone in. I want to leave you with one more image. It is a Sunday morning in early spring. The kids are at the kitchen table. Caleb is reading the paper. Daniel is making a face at Catherine. Catherine is telling him to stop. Margaret is pouring coffee. The fountain in the courtyard is still running. The little bronze numbers of the house are still 1418. The silver locket is still around her neck. The door is unlocked. I am at the table.